In my eagerness to look at all the passages where women lament either the death of Patroklos or the death of Achilles, and when I say women, I, for the moment, include goddesses as well as humans. In my eagerness to collect all of those examples, sometimes I neglect the fact that Achilles himself performs a lament for Patroklos, and here is the core of that lament. And I think it's so full of pathos, pathos in the Greek sense of a larger-than-life passion, a set of emotions that can only be experienced by larger-than-life people, not ordinary people like us. And there he is in the presence of the corpse of Patroklos and saying, now, there you are, lying there all cut up, while my heart is wanting. Here it comes, because of my longing for you. That's why his heart is wanting. At this point, you can see his ascending scale of affections. He loves nobody more than his other self, Patroklos, not even his father, not even his son, although you can see how emotional he is about both the father and the son. And Lenny, remember, you and I had once worked on line 327, where Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles, is referred to. And here in this very formal Homeric setting, the emotion is not as deeply expressed as in other variants that we happen to know of from the textual tradition of the Iliad, where he says words that are much more tender about Neoptolemus, and in fact calls him by his less formal name Pyros, or in the case of this variant, Pyres, meaning something like the fiery one. But it's once again a sign that the overall Homeric view of Achilles tends to be restrained in what we today would call a classical way. There is less demonstration of emotion than we find in other phases of the Achilles tradition. And when he's more emotional, then we understand his identity and his ascending scale of affection even more than when he's less emotional. But even with this restrained lament, the intensity is still very much there, don't you think?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I worked on this. You talked about the ascending scale of affection.
Yes.
Where here you have a contrast between the closest blood relatives.
Yes.
And the relationship that's an affective relationship only, and how in this case that trumps the closest blood relatives, whereas elsewhere in the Iliad you have a different sort of thing about, for example, in the scenes in Book 9 where Ajax talks about how you know what the poine is for
right.
a yes. person who's a member of your own family, and that this is only about a woman, right?
Yes,
so there's a very interesting sort of dialectic here.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and so you're saying that friendship or the person one loves, that kind of relationship trumps blood relationship
in this particular
in this particular case.
Yeah. So, but I think you for example, in Iliad 24, right, where you see Priam and Achilles, there you have the father relationship becomes the overwhelming one.
Although
out between the two men in a certain way.
Although even there, you could say that whereas Priam is lamenting Hector,
right.
Achilles
is
laments
Patroklos.
one moment his father, right. the other moment Patroklos. So you say, okay, Patroklos is a friend, and friendship can trump blood relations, except that Patrokles means he who has the kleos of the fathers.
Exactly.
So you can have it both ways there, even though Achilles oscillates between lamenting for his father and lamenting for Patroklos, which means the glory of the fathers.
Right. But you also have Priam lamenting for his own son, right?
Yes.
The most horrible thing for a father to experience, the death of his own child, right?
What a way to end an epic, and that comes very close to the ending. So this is the lament of Achilles for Patroklos, and in a sense, a lament for himself. By lamenting for Patroklos and lamenting the death of Patroklos is showing the post-heroic world how they will lament him, Achilles.